like we're counting down to like launch a rocket or something.
It is. It's the Metal Block rocket. Super exciting. Super exciting, everybody. Thank you for joining us. We are happy to have you with us. Glad to be here for another week, talk about some metal, and continuing what we love the most, which is just hanging out with other musicians, talking to them about what they do, what they're working on, where they come from, and everything in between, before and after. So today we have Vox Nostra with us, a band out of Houston, Texas. Rockin' Houston. We love Houston, right, Brando?
That's right.
Well, it is special because for us it's still home. I know that the Metal Block isn't all in one place, but the fact that we're getting to hang out with bands that are in our hometowns, at least one way, shape, or form, like we're connected. It's still family, and we appreciate you guys taking just a second to come hang out with us tonight. So why don't you guys introduce yourself real quick? Nathan, why don't you start out, and we'll go on from there.
Yeah, that sounds good. I'm Nathan Buckoff. I'm the vocalist of Vox Nostra. Been with the band since we started, and happy to be here.
Right, Steven.
Yeah, I guess that leaves it up to me. I'm Steve. I play drums. I do a lot of other stuff. Nathan can tell you about everything I do for the band, but
Oh,
my main instrument is drums.
he's the in-house videographer, photographer, graphic designer, merch designer. He does like 99% of the behind-the-scenes work. That's all Steven.
Awesome. Well, that's
I'll,
cool.
uh,
Sounds like you're a busy guy.
Very
Yeah, and I
Too
mean
busy.
like that takes a lot of priority with like all the visual stuff, but I am also now in charge of all the audio stuff in the most part too. Um, so everything we have upcoming, I'm doing the production for the actual DI tracks of the guitar, bass, um, pretty much helping write any sort of virtual instruments, getting the live set together, editing guitars, and then probably the only thing I won't be doing is actually recording the drums. So that'll be done at another facility, which we'll talk about later. That along with more than likely Nathan's vocals, and then from there it'll be mixed and mastered, but also not by me. I'm not that good.
All right, cool.
It's awesome. That's awesome. Well, that's a great introduction. Turning it over, Brando. Why don't you get us started with some questions? Oh, I almost forgot. Everybody, go check out the social medias. Go check out what's happening. We're still doing the daily commute every day. It's how we find awesome, awesome bands, just like these guys right here. Tell us which ones you like. Tell us some bands that you would like us to play. You could also write us, metalblocktalks@gmail.com. Drop us a line. Tell us what's on your mind. We would love to hear it. So, sorry, forgot to plug. Brando, take her away.
Sometimes you gotta plug shit, man. No
Ah,
worries. Consider it gone. That was a great episode. Just kidding. All right. So Nathan and Steven, Folks Nostra, you guys are awesome. We know you've got 2 singles out on like streaming platforms, and sounds like you're working on some stuff. Steven, maybe you'll invite Nathan to come be a part of it at some point.
We'll
That's
see.
cool.
We'll see.
Well, we love to start when we have guests on, talking to them and hearing what are your individual influences, like, and your upbringing in metal. What got you? Tell us about your like start with metal. How'd you get into it?
Nathan,
Okay, I'll go
God.
first. Mine's a little bit longer. So, I started in music when I was about 6 years old. I'm actually a classical violinist. I still play. I've been playing for about 14 years. Took some time off. I was in the army for about 4 years, so took some time off when I did that and couldn't play. Picked it back up about a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago. And I've always really loved like very intense music, right? So I didn't have a big exposure to metal or death metal or really anything until I remember it very vividly. Uh, I was sitting in like homeroom when I was in like sixth grade, like 12 years old, and I saw a Nile music video, and was just like immediately in love with it. Like I totally skipped the like metalcore, deathcore, all of that, and just went into straight brutal technical death metal, and then kind of worked backwards. And at the time, was really into bands like Devil Wears Prada, August Burns Red, stuff like that. After Not after, but while I was playing violin, got more into metal. I became very interested in the guitar for, obvious reasons, and started picking up the guitar. Played a little bit as a kid, and then got kind of not into metal guitar even, but my instructor is a jazz teacher, so I started playing jazz guitar. So it's weird. I'm a classical violinist, plays jazz guitar, but just has like a really deep love for just extreme metal. That's how I got into it. And then I heard vocals from like the Devil Wears Prada, the Pray for Plagues album, and then with Roots Below, and I was like, yeah, let me try it. Let me figure out how to do this. And I would be like 13, 14 years old, lock myself in my closet so my parents couldn't hear it, and just like destroy my vocal cords. Because I mean, at the time, you could go on YouTube and be like, yeah, how to do metal vocals, and there was like nothing, right? Now you've got a lot of really good resources like Cardivox, Extreme Vocal Institute, but at the time there was like nothing even remotely close to that. So I like fumbled my way around learning metal vocals and just kept at it. Thankfully, didn't hurt myself. Nothing that I couldn't recover from, right? And yeah, I've been at it for years, and I love it. I think about it every single day.
That's awesome. It's a good story. What about you, Steven?
So similar to Nathan, a little different. I'm not cool how to play violin or any classical instruments. I just know how to chug and that's about it. But so I actually started on guitar. My dad's a guitar player, or yeah, my dad's a guitar player, not teacher. So he kind of got me started at like a young age, and it was one of those things that like I was going to lessons and I'm like I don't have a drive to do this at all. Like I'm just not musically inclined. Like I was learning like Smoke on the Water and every beginner guitar riff ever, like Seven Nation Army, and I'm like, all right, like this is kind of bullshit. So like, whatever. Um, so I kind of stopped playing music for a long time, but I was always an avid listener. So like I grew up on, God, I'm gonna be 32. So I grew up on like early 2000s emo and all that jazz. So Linkin Park, everything else, everything in between. So I kind of had like a knack for metal at that point because Chester, Screamer, yada yada yada. Uh, so from there, I was skateboarding, hanging out at the skate park and stuff like that, and a lot of those guys were starting to get into like ska and like more aggressive punk, like Leftover Crack and all of that kind of really heavy stuff like the Misfits and everything like that. And then there were a few kids that were much more into more metal things. So I grew up in a small lake town up in northwest New Jersey, and it really it was a really big math core and like experimental scene. So obviously, I'm sure you guys have heard the Number 12 Looks Like You, and that was like the band in that area at the time. So uh, that was probably like my first step into any form of metal music. So I was listening to the Number 12 Looks Like You, and then started to get into like heavy Lolo and Horse the Band and all like those noise core bands back in the time. And then obviously all like your mainstream post-hardcore like Chiodos and the Devil Wears Prada way early on. Like I think I saw them during like Dear Love a Beautiful Discord era and Atreyu and every single like kind of early 2000s metal band. And that actually leads me into why I play drums is I went to a regional high school and met a dude in like my shop class. We went to like a vocational school, but instead of doing like carpentry or like plumbing or whatever, we did graphic. So I had met him. His name was Brett, great dude, and he was a drummer, but we just geeked out on like early 2000s metalcore at that point, and I'd gotten into it probably about seventh or eighth grade, and this was beginning of freshman year. And he was one of those drummers that would always like tap on the desk and stuff like that. That eventually led me to start tapping on the desk and pissing off my teacher every day and that kind of thing. And I'm gonna wrap it up, I promise. I was at a barbecue one day at my godfather's house, and I was tapping on the table, and one of his neighbors was like, "Hey, like, do you play drums?" And I was like, "No, like I'm trained in guitar, trained, but I don't play drums." And he was a good friend of my dad. He's like, "I have like a old Yamaha kit sitting in the garage. Do you want it?" And I was like, "Sure." Like, it might piss off my mom, but yeah, of course. And the rest is history. That was 15 or 16, and 15 years later, here I am.
Awesome. Well, hell yeah. That's some good history, guys.
Yeah, cool with the, like still giving props to kind of some of the new metal scene there with the Linkin Park. I think Linkin Park was still new metal. I think they were kind of the tail end of it, maybe a little bit. Is that what they are, or am I like making this up?
I'd throw them into new metal, and actually, Nathan and I love new metal. We just went to see Limp Bizkit like 2 weeks
I was
ago.
just about to say
Yeah.
that.
Oh, Limp Bizkit is now.
First, baby.
Oh man, they are a sought after act now to go and see just because like of their stage performance. And I mean, props to them. Actually, if you would have asked me back growing up through the 90s, seeing the new metal come in during the 90s, like I would have bet out of, Deftones, Limp Bizkit, and Korn, I would have bet that Limp Bizkit would have been the least likely to be relevant 20, 25 years later. And the fact that now they are, in my opinion, the most relevant, and I know the other bands are still out there doing their thing, but whenever I see like concert headlines and stuff like that, I'm not seeing Korn, I'm seeing Limp Bizkit, and so it's just kind of funny how time shows you the truth regardless of what you think you know.
It's really weird because I was watching like a small short interview with Fred Durst or something, and when they came back and put out the new record a year or so ago, he came out and was like, "Hey, like we're not doing any marketing, we're not doing any advertising, like we're just putting this stuff out and seeing where it gets us. Like we've been doing this for years, we've done music videos, we've done this and that." He's like, "I just want a social experiment and see how far we could get just self-releasing everything." And it paid off. Like apparently they blew up on, I guess, TikTok or something like that, and now they're like a bunch of memes on Instagram. But I mean, at the end of the day, like Fred Durst is great, but like Wes Borland just ripped. Like he's just the head honcho of like heavy beefy riffs.
Yeah, he's kind of a modern master of the down tuning, if you ask me. I mean, the dude can play some down tuned guitars, like drop tuning. I'm sorry, not just down tuning, but drop tune. And it's just kind of, fun to see all of that happening right now and being like, hey, I remember when $3 Bill Y'all came out, and that was a big deal. Everybody was loving that album. And then, in my opinion, I know this isn't about Limp Bizkit, but you just got me going. But after they had those earlier albums and they had some success in the beginning, I feel like everything after that really just like wasn't that great at all. But here's what was fun. You mentioned the no marketing, social experiment kind of thing. I don't think they put out, I could be wrong about this, but I do not think they put out physical copies of the CD or album that they put out a few years ago. It was all streaming. That was the only thing it was available on. So most people could...
I believe it.
Yeah, so most people could access it for free or through, just their membership anyway that they're paying. And they didn't have to actually produce or print and distribute and all of that stuff. Here we go. So anyway, great exit from Limp Bizkit.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. No, you're totally right. And I don't know. I love that band. Pollution is literally, and anyone could fight me on this, but Pollution is probably the heaviest song ever written. I'm going to be honest.
I would have to arm wrestle you against Pantera Domination, but I love that song. So.
Oh my God! Wait! Before we move on from this, I don't know if you're into them. I was a massive Every Time I Die fan, and pretty much every time I saw Every Time I Die, whenever they played No Son of Mine, they would then go into the breakdown of Domination, and that was like balls to the wall, like dumb heavy.
So imagine seeing Pantera playing that part of their own song, and people just going nuts. So I think it's really funny because I think at Monsters of Metal, after Dimebag played Domination, or after they played Domination, Dimebag walked off stage and went up to, I think, Lars and Metallica and said, "Beat that," because they were going on after Pantera. So good stuff.
That is good stuff. I like it. And Pantera is definitely up our alley. But guys, tell us a little bit about how your band, Vox Nostra, kind of like, how did you guys come about? Like, how did the band form, and how long ago, and stuff like that?
Oh man, so this was probably right during the middle of COVID. I think it might have been 2021 or 2022. But I was at a point where I was like, you know what, I've never been in a band. I want to try to find a band, or try to find people to put a band together. Put a band together with. Best I can play all these instruments. I know how to write music. I can do vocals. Like, let's figure it out. So I went on the Houston Metal page, right? And I just put it out there a couple of times, like more than once. And I got connected with our former bass player, and he and I got together. He had a guitarist at the time. They were trying to do like some gent stuff, but it just wasn't really it. And the guitarist he's a good guitarist, but he's just like, he was not mentally committed to it. So the bass player and I were like, all right, well, we both love technical death metal. Steven dropped off. Whatever, he'll be back. We both love technical death metal. We both love progressive metal. We have all of these things in common. So let's do that. And from there, we just put it out there. We were trying to find guitarists. We were trying to find drummers. We are trying to find all that stuff. And in Houston, I feel like the scene is more hardcore, deathcore, metalcore. So finding another group of people that's interested in a little bit more complicated music, stuff that you have to take time to practice, it's difficult, right? Because it takes a lot of time. A lot of people just don't have that time. But we got connected with Juan Diaz, who's our guitarist, maestro extraordinaire, and we just started writing. He has another project called In the Native Tongue of a Horse. They've got like 20 songs that they haven't released yet. I'm waiting for them to do it because they've been together for like 10 years. But he's a phenomenal guitar player, like just above and beyond, right? So he started showing us some of the stuff that he had like half written. So we started writing that stuff together. Even full songs that he had done, then I would go in and just like absolutely bastardize them, be like, hey, Juan, play this. Like, dude, I hate you. And from there, like, finding a drummer is always, I feel like it's the hardest thing, right? Because there's not very many drummers around, and every drummer that you do find, they're in 3 or 4 other bands, which they're just in demand. I don't hate them for it. It just is what it is. But we got connected with Steven, and Steven had moved to Houston recently. He still does play with another band up in New Jersey called Falling Through the Center of the Earth. They're like technical metalcore. They're really, really good. If you haven't heard of them, you should absolutely look them up because they're phenomenal. So we kind of talked to him about, hey, this is what we're going for. This is what we want to do. But we're at ground zero right now. Like we haven't really done anything. We barely have social medias. We don't have any music to show for it, which a lot of times that's like the first thing a band member wants to see is like, oh, hey, here's the stuff that we're working on. Here's how we sound, right? But we didn't have any of that. So from there, Stephen Juan, our former bass player, and I, we just took off. Like we started writing music together. We've been writing this EP that we're working on for maybe 2 years at this point, just really trying to hone in on everything. We put out 2 singles that the previous guitarist, the bass player, and I had put together, which was very kind of rudimentary. Like it was the first 2 singles, right? So like you go back, you look at a band, their first 2 singles are never the epitome of what they want to be, but it was something. and it's still good. Like I'm not faulting that at all. But that's really how we got together. And then our bass player, his life just changed. He went his own way. He moved out to San Antonio. Still love him. He's a great guy. He's a phenomenal bass player. But when he left, now it's just, me, Juan, and Steven. And then we've got a guy in training who, if you guys come to our show on the 28th, that'll be his first show with us, kind of like a trial by fire. But that's really how
Cool.
we got together and how we've gotten to where we are right now.
Is well, that's pretty cool. Is that show on the 28th the Radiation Productions anniversary?
Yep. Jose with Radiation Productions, that's their, I think, the 13th anniversary. And we're
Mm-hmm.
playing with Upon a Burning Body, which was also our first show ever, like
Oh,
as a
nice.
band. We were very fortunate to where we had some connections. We're not friends with the guys in Upon a Burning Body, but we're very loose acquaintances. So when they were coming to Houston last December, we're like, hey guys, it would be awesome if you could put in a word for us, third string third string productions, I think, or third string promotions. They don't know us from Adam. We have never played a show before. They're like, we'll put in a good word. And we opened for that show, and it was awesome. We sold out venue. It packed Scout Bar wall to wall, mosh pits, people crowd surfing, and it was a Christmas show, so it was just a lot of fun. And to get to be able to play with them again and kind of knowing what Upon a Burning Body brings to the Texas scene, it's going to be a blast. And there's a ton of other really good local bands on there too.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's pretty cool.
Also,
And yeah, Jose,
I'm good now, right? I'm back.
Yeah, you're
Y'all can
fine.
hear me.
yes.
All right.
Welcome back, buddy.
Welcome
Yeah,
back.
it was perfect. You cut off right as I was talking shit about you.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. It's awesome.
Couldn't have worked out any better.
Let's skip out on talking about how much of an idiot I am. All right.
No, I was telling them about whenever we got in touch with you. You had moved to Houston recently, and you had played with. You still are playing with Falling Through the Center of the Earth, and we were just talking about how everybody kind of got connected together.
Yeah.
Which mainly was over the Houston metal page. We just
Facebook,
put it
yeah,
out there like,
Facebook.
hey, we've got a band. We're looking for musicians, just like a lot of other local bands are, taking advantage of or using those Facebook groups where they have a lot of people with like interests and just trying to find who you connect with.
I don't even remember whose post did I respond to. Was it you, Jay, or Kevin? I think Kevin was actually the first one I talked to.
I don't want to talk about Kevin. I think it was Jay.
It was
I
one
think
of
it was
them.
me
It
or
was one of
Jay.
them.
Oh man. So Steven, are you from New Jersey?
Yeah, born and raised. I grew up in like a small lake town in Northwest Jersey. Um, and I went to. I told you before I went to a regional high school. It and people are shocked whenever I tell them this, but it was literally in the middle of a cornfield. It was on the border of Sparta and Hardiston, New Jersey. Um, so just like very much farmland, and people are like, "Oh, New Jersey, like North New Jersey City," and I'm like, "No, like Garden State farming." But after high school and after college, I had wanted to move to New York City, and I had transitioned to a town called Bloomfield, New Jersey, which is about 20 minutes from Newark Airport, and about 20 minutes outside of Manhattan. So the closer I moved to New York City, the more I was like, yeah, now I'm good in Jersey. So yeah.
Right on.
Yeah.
Nathan, are you from Houston?
No, I moved around a lot as a kid. So I'm originally from Columbus, Georgia. It's a really small town, about 2 hours south of Atlanta, kind of right on the other side of the Georgia border with Alabama. Like Auburn is maybe 30 minutes away from there. I lived in Georgia, Iowa, Dallas, Connecticut, Vermont, North Carolina. I've moved all over, but I've lived in Houston the longest. And then my family lived in Houston when I was like in high school. I mentioned it earlier. I was in the Army for a little bit. I got stationed out on the East Coast, and then whenever I knew I was getting out, I kind of had two decisions. I was like, well, I could go up and do some stuff in Washington, D.C., or I could move back to Houston. And my wife at the time was my wife now was my girlfriend at the time, lived in Houston. I still don't really have like a big family or anything, but she is like a huge family. And a lot of them are in Houston. So I was like, well, we did long distance for like 9 months. I'm not going to make her do that while I'm like doing whatever stuff I'm doing in DC, so I moved back to Houston.
Right on. Well, welcome back. Sweet. So, who would you guys say is maybe like the main? What bands would you say are like the main influences on Vox Nostra's sound?
I feel like
Are there any?
I feel like each of us have different influences. Um,
That's exactly what I was gonna say.
yeah, so vocally, Nathan's much more of a fan of like brutal death metal, and he could name the bands. I can't even read the logos. Um,
No, it's not. Don't
Party
don't put words
Cannon.
in my
You can
mouth.
read that one though.
No, no, no. Vocally, no, probably if I had to pick three, Bender, Shadow of Intent, Travis Ryan with Cattle Decapitation, and then Johnny Davey with Job for a Cowboy. Those are definitely like my big three. I've got other influences, but yeah, vocally those are mine. And then as far as writing stuff, just for me, I pull a lot actually from my classical experience, right? Like I've played a lot of French Romantic and Baroque music, which conveniently translates over to death metal a lot. Like you'd be very surprised. Um, so I pull a lot from there, and then just just write. I just write really dumb stuff that I don't have to play. But yeah, no,
All
we've
right.
all
Honestly,
everybody in the
that's
band
that's
has
the
like
name of the game. It's like even when I'm writing guitar and like I'll talk about some other stuff later, but like even for my band that's still up in New Jersey, we're like an internet project at this point, but like I always write the most outlandish shit because I'm like, yo, I don't have to play it, whatever. So like
yeah.
Nathan and I will do the same thing to our guitar player Juan all the time and like just kind of throw a bunch of numbers in a tablature program and be like, here, I wrote this. Do you like it? And he's like, no.
Yeah, I mean, I won't speak for Steven on what his influences are. He can tell you about that, but at least Juan and I have a lot of overlap with he really loves technical death metal. Like you're wearing a First Fragment hat. We've gone to see First Fragment every single time they've been in Houston, just because Phil Tuggus is probably one of his favorite guitarists. Same thing with Malcolm from Inferi.
Yeah.
He really loves Necrophagist, The Faceless. Anything where it just sounds like it would break your hand to try and play it, like that's right up Juan's alley.
Yeah.
And
Right on. So
yeah,
He's even
that's cool. I'm only aware of First Fragment coming 2 times. I went to both also, so
that was so much fun, so good. They had no
yeah.
business being that good. It made me want to quit music. I was like, damn it, I'm never gonna be that good.
Right?
Go home and practice more.
And then the way they play it and have fun on stage, like they don't even look like they're struggling at all. Like they're just up there having fun, and like
that's
they
always
they
the
don't even have
worst.
to focus. It's
Yeah,
like, dude, I have to focus to listen to your music. Like how are you just up there like farting around while you're playing, and it's nothing.
the
You,
the funniest thing to me is the first time we saw First Fragment. I guess when they came and they played upstairs at White Oak.
with
Um,
Archaic.
Yes,
Yep.
the not Phil Tuggus, but their other guitarist. He was just, it didn't look like a metal band at all. Like he was wearing a Poison shirt and like cut
Hmm.
off jorts. It was awesome. And then he just gets up there and shreds for almost an hour.
I feel like
Yeah.
speaking of like bands not dicking around on stage but kind of making it look easy and I'm gonna piss off a lot of people. I'm not a First Fragment fan, literally at all. Um
Not a big tech death fan. It's very niche for
I
Steven.
I'm very picky and I'll get to that later, but like Archspire, who is like not one of my favorite bands ever, but like watching them live and just seeing them kind of like moving around and kind of messing with each other and I'm like, stop. Like you're too good at what you do already. You don't need to like, show off,
Yeah.
I'm sitting here struggling every show I play and they're just making it look easy. But I get it. They're on tour, probably 100
Yeah.
something days a year. Like it makes sense.
Were you
Um,
at their recent show with Aborted and Carcosa and
no,
Alluvial?
I
no,
wish I
I
could have been
went,
because I love Aborted.
yeah, I went, uh, to Secret Group when they played with Inferi. And
Oh, I
I'm
missed
a,
that one.
I'm a
That's
big
awesome.
Inferi guy. So, and who was the other? What's that band with the chick vocalist? Naveen's band. Can't think of it.
Stabbing?
Naveen Copperwise? Oh,
Yeah,
you're talking about
Oh, Entheos?
yeah,
Envious,
Entheos,
yeah.
Entheos. They were on that tour too, and I'm a big so as far as like picky with tech death goes, like Inferi is one of the bands that like hit that little for me.
Well, it's got
Um,
Yeah.
Sanjay Kumar, Malcolm Poe. Like, how could you not love it?
I mean, for a lot of it for me, and like obviously Spencer is one of the sickest drummers out there right now, but I love any form of like death metal that has like very melodic lead guitars to it, and like any sort of like yeah, I was gonna say ambience. Anything that's very like subtle like that, I eat it up. So I absolutely love that band. But then I go to the entire opposite end of the spectrum, which is probably my favorite tech death band, and that'll always be Beneath the Massacre because they're just incredible.
Steven,
They
yeah, tell
are.
them about your influences, man. I just talked over you. I'm
Oh
sorry.
god, oh god.
Give us pop punk.
Yeah, lay it on us.
Yeah.
I was going to circle back to that.
If it's not 2000s emo, 2000s metalcore, or like pop punk, I'm probably not listening to that. I mean, like, I love, obviously, like, Blink-182 starts it all, so I'll briefly mention them, but, probably top five all-time bands for me, and I might have to pause on one of them, I'm not even sure, would be, like, Misery Signals is my all-time favorite band. I literally flew out to New Jersey and Brooklyn for 48 hours last month to go see their farewell show up there because they're not coming down here. So I'd say like them counterparts, the receiving end of Sirens, who's like an incredible progressive post emo band from Massachusetts from like the early 2000s. One of my favorite bands of all time. Um, the story so far, and then I don't even know who number five would be, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, I listen to a lot of death metal or tech death and stuff like that, but definitely, I'll put Boundaries as number five. Boundaries is like hitting for me, and Kublai Khan, like just any kind of like early 2000s metalcore inspired stuff is just like
All right. I dig it. That's awesome. So, okay, so you guys touched on it a little bit. My next question is about the creative process for you guys. And it sounds like I was going to ask, is there one person that kind of like leads the writing process in the song creation for you guys? But it sounds like you all write parts of the songs and then like even the guitar parts and stuff and share them with each other and like just or like how exactly does it work for you guys?
This is normally the process. I am almost always writing music. Uh, Steven's gonna roll his eyes, but I have to mention this. I am 2 weeks away from graduating from Berkeley with two E's, the jazz school, not the pop school. So just by nature of that, every single week I'm writing music, and when I practice my guitar and my violin, I am constantly hearing riffs, music in my head, and that's like one of those things where I just have to get it out. It can be a 10-second riff, it could be a 9-minute song, right? So a lot of times we have like a Google Drive that's almost full of just riffs, just 10-second to 9-minute long riffs and stuff. And I'll write a lot of it, Juan will write a lot of it. Steven will have like his couple that he has written, and then we'll just bring him to the group. We have like a writing session pretty much. And we'll come out, we'll listen to everything, and we'll go, okay, well, no, we don't like this, or we want to do this, or we want to add something here. So it's very collaborative, which is something I appreciate about it, because I don't want to just have one person writing the music. I want it to be something that everybody enjoys. Like Steven is, we call him Chug Daddy. He's pretty much like, if there's a part that needs like a cool, groovy, like chug pattern, breakdowns, whatever it is, he is the guy, because I'm just not in that sense. A lot of the stuff where I'll bring it to Juan and he'll go, man, this is not playable. I don't have 8 fingers. I'm going to rewrite it this way. And then we'll send it back and forth and back and forth and back and forth until we finally either get tired of trying to write something or just like, yeah, fuck it. Like that's what it is. We're not working on this anymore. Because at a certain point, we can work on stuff forever. But if we're going to make music, we have to put down the pencil at some point, right? Or we'll get to a point where, like, you know what? We all agree that we like the way this sounds. We've all touched it. We've all had stuff taken out, added to it. You know, we've had, oh, well, this riff is an F sharp minor and this song is an F sharp minor. Yeah, maybe it could go really good right here. We'll take this part out. So it's very kind of chopped and screwed, but it works. It works for what we're trying to do.
Awesome. That's cool. I
So
like the process.
yeah, so I want to touch on a couple of things you said. So let it be known, I probably do the least amount of actually composing the guitar parts in this band. Um, Out of the three or four of us, like I probably touch guitar the least, which is a change for me, for sure. But I kind of let Nathan. Nathan's usually the ringleader as far as like writing riffs and stuff like that goes. And then I have a decent ear as far as knowing what'll flow together, um, knowing what I like, knowing actually what I would want to listen to. And I would say honestly, like I don't label myself as a gatekeeper whatsoever, but like I know the type of music I wanna listen to, and I am usually pretty good at what would at least be like entertaining, I guess you could say. Um, because it's not always just listening to mindless breakdowns or like just riffing so hard that like you get lost in translation of even what's going on. Um, so I'm kind of I don't want to say the voice of reason, but I I
Yeah, you are.
I
You are.
I definitely push when I'm like, okay, like this riff is sick, but like we're abusing it to the point where like it's not even entertaining anymore. Like we need to if we're repeating it four times, like we need to cut it down to like three or two, or even just like give them a little sample and then bring it back later, or like, hey, like this is getting really overwhelmingly chaotic. Like let's tone it down a little bit. Let's do like a nice little clean section and then bring it back full force, or anything from like, even if Nathan don't know like that we have a new intro for our set list that is also going to be the an intro. It's 2.5 minutes long. It's going to be the intro for the upcoming EP as well, and that's very much your build up, build up, build up, build up, like absolute climax, like just in your face, and then kind of settles back down into like a nice transition into the first song on the record. So
Yeah, and Steven wrote all of that,
Nice.
all of it.
yeah, I'm very much the not behind the scenes, but I'll listen to something and be like, hey, I like this. I like this. This could be tweaked. This could be scrapped. And it's going pretty well so far, at least for the way we write. And I think more times than not, the guys kind of understand my point of view and respect whatever kind of decisions I have and input I have.
Hell yeah. I mean, being forward and honest with your bandmates is going to be the best way for everyone to, one, know that you're not BSing each other, and two, everybody's happy with what's coming out because nobody wants their bandmates. You're basically brothers, who you spend a lot of time with doing something they don't really want to do or don't like, right? Like, I know I wouldn't want to get on stage and play songs that I'm like, oh, well, I don't really care for this one, but oh, Zumi loves it, so I guess I'll play
Literally,
it.
literally to like a fault too. And I know I've butt heads with a lot of people about my bluntness, and that's just very much a northeastern way of thinking. Is like we're just very to the point. It's like that New York mentality of like we're very to the point. Like we know what we want, X, Y, and Z. And I've definitely ruffled feathers within the band and outside of the band, throughout the years. But usually, let's say I piss off Juan or piss off Nathan, like a few hours later, or maybe even like a couple days, they'll come back and be like, "Hey, like what you said makes sense. Like I didn't realize it at the time, but like the more I sat on it, the more I'm like, okay, like I get it." So I
Yeah.
mean, they know I love them. They know I'm just a little blunt to a fault sometimes.
That's definitely something I can appreciate about our band. I mean, it's kind of like I mentioned earlier. I've never been in a real band before. Like I was in a high school band, not like the marching band shit, but like made a band with a couple of high school buddies. I played casually with some friends while I was on the East Coast, but never anything serious. But I have heard horror stories of bands where they are run by kind of like a single dictator, or bands that like they play the music together, but they fucking hate each other, right? And I really appreciate that we can sit down, we can have disagreements, but we can kind of respect each other's differences. And honestly, it's very democratic in the way that if I'm like, well, I want it this way, and the rest of the band is like, no, man, it's not. Like, I'm not gonna die on that hill. Like, I'm not gonna make myself look bad or potentially hurt a relationship with not just my bandmates but also my friends. And I
Mm-hmm.
just know it. If that's the way you guys want it to be, that's the way it is. And that's not just with me. That's really with everybody, right? Like if Steven thinks it's, hey, we want it to be this way, but the rest of the band's like, no, okay, well, we just let it be, right? Because I don't want anybody to get on stage and play something kind of like what you said, where they're like, ah, man, I hate this song, but I'll play it. I want them to be proud of what they're doing, and I want them to enjoy it. I feel like they also have a hand in it, right? Because it makes a big difference when you're playing something that you helped create, not just like, hey, here's the sheet music, learn it, nerd, right?
Yeah, for sure. It's a very good point.
Yeah, and it sounds a little bit cliche, but iron sharpens iron. It takes you a lot
Exactly.
further. We help each other get better. And I always tell my son, if we were already perfect, we would just sit around all day and drink weak tea. And he's like, why would we drink weak tea, Dad? And I go, because we would be boring, son. We would be boring. We wouldn't have influences from one another, and we wouldn't be able to laugh about jokes that we hadn't heard yet, and hear stories that from other people's point of views. And so perspective is everything in this world. And hey, congratulations on graduating coming up.
Ah,
That's cool.
I'm working on the final project. It's not done yet, but I've got a good feeling about it.
No, that's
Yeah, that is
that's
pretty
awesome.
cool. That's great.
It's exactly what you said. Like, I've learned so much. I mean, I've played music for the majority of my life, but I have still learned so much from playing with these other guys. And I've been introduced to music that I would have never taken a second look at if it just like came across my social media or whatever, like, next. But like the story so far, right? Like, I'm not a big pop punk guy, but they released an album earlier, and Steven told me, he's like, dude, this has got to be one of the best albums of the year. Took a listen to it, and it blew me the fuck away. I was like, okay, I can get behind this. Or like some of the very experimental stuff that Juan likes. Like, there's a small band out of New York that hopefully not small for long, called Sarmat, and they're like a weird combination of like death metal and like experimental jazz. And I would have never listened to it, but Juan was like, "Yeah, I love this album," and I took a listen. I was like, "Oh, that's great." So they've taught me a lot about music, about working with other people, and they've also helped expand my musical horizons as an individual. I can't appreciate that enough.
I don't think when this band started, I don't think Nathan would have ever projected himself listening to Kaunashi, but
No,
now
never.
now he
And
does.
now we sing it at the studio.
And I don't know if you know Kaunashi, but they have like kind of like heavy down-tuned guitars, but Peter Rono, the vocalist, they're a Philly band, sings in like this high pitch, not even a scream, like yell almost. And they're
It's
absolutely
so fun.
bananas. Like they're them along with like the Callous Cowboys, who me and Nathan also absolutely adore, are reviving that sound that I grew up on in North Jersey in the early 2000s, of like that very experimental, like you're kind of listening and you're like, oh, like I don't know what's going on. So any band from like, another Jersey band, love them, like Dillinger Escape Plan, like Callous Cowboys is like reviving that sound, Grey Haven's reviving that sound, and I'm between that and Boundaries reviving the like It Dies Today like Cave Choir sound. Like I'm living in the 2000s again, and I couldn't be more excited about it, to be honest.
That's great.
That's like when I went and saw Cradle of Filth in like 2022 or something. I was like, I feel like I'm in eighth grade again.
Listed to Nymphetamine and her Ghost in the Fog. It was
Yes,
like the
yes.
first like black metal band that I ever heard of. Heavy air quotes for anybody that didn't see that in on video.
That's hilarious. I'm right there with you. So,
Yeah.
anyways, great
Yeah.
stuff.
That just makes me think of like one that I was into in high school. Like I think Coal Chamber is doing stuff again,
Oh my God.
right? Like
Loco.
yeah. Well, I
Yeah,
just keep hearing it's called
logo,
Big Truck.
big truck. It's great stuff.
Yeah.
I think
So
sorry, God, no, God, it don't
no, no,
matter.
go for it.
I was just gonna say, I feel like, and y'all are old enough to remember MySpace, but I feel like everything is just coming full circle, and we're just revisiting that like MySpace pure volume, everything from deathcore to mathcore to like everything is just like OG metalcore, like it's all just coming back, and I'm like, good, good.
Yeah. We
It's
had a
like me,
we had
man.
a we had a MySpace band. We had a
We
band with a
did.
Oh
MySpace.
heck yeah.
Yep.
Oh hell
Yeah.
yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. And then, they got rid of all of our songs, so our songs aren't there anymore. Our page is there, though, Brando. Don't know
Is
if
it
you know.
really?
The page is there, but there aren't any songs anymore.
We're talking circa 2007, 2008.
This is
Oh my
this is
God.
this is not gonna probably shock you, um, because you could just kind of look at me and probably assume it. But my first band, and I played drums in it actually, which is hilarious because I had been playing drums for like a year at this point. So I think the band started. I wasn't even able to drive. I think I was like 16 but turning 17, and I still talk to some of these dudes on a regular basis. Like I lived with one of them for 2 years and stuff like that. Great dudes. But we were very much like MySpace era, like I See Stars, We Came as Romans mix. And this is probably, I think we recorded the EP back in like 2010. So this was like very the goods at the time. And yeah, to your point, I you might be able to still find it on MySpace. If not, my vocalist had put it up on Spotify like randomly about a year or two ago. But MySpace was a heck of a time. It was a great time to grow up.
Yeah, it's funny you said that. I dropped our stuff on YouTube like just about a year or two ago just for, fun and sent it to the guys. I was like, remember this?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Memory lane. So if I don't fall, I'll take the trip down it. But all right. So I was gonna ask. So is the whole band here in Houston? And when you guys like, do you do in-person jam sessions, or is stuff kind of digital and just passing it around via email?
I'll touch on this. So yeah, we're currently all in Houston. Um, so Nathan's been here for however long. Juan, I believe is an OG Houstonian. Andrew, I'm not sure about. I think I'm the most recent transplant, and I've been here. I just hit 3 years. But as far as we're unconventional for the old times, so we don't have, you know, let's say like I don't go in the studio and like start a beat and like have one follower and like he doesn't write a riff and then just kind of like start playing it and follow. Like we're very much conventional in the aspect of being in, past 2020, where it's very much a digital age. So Nathan's usually, like we were saying earlier, he's usually the head of writing riffs and then kind of working them out from there, seeing what can be played and stuff like that. So when he goes in, usually Guitar Pro, kind of tab out something that he's feeling like, usually sit down with a seventh string of some sort just to make sure like all his hand positionings and stuff are playable. Which more times than not they are, but there's sometimes easier ways to
It's
play it or
sometimes right
more
stupid.
fluid ways to play it. So I noticed specifically on one of the things he wrote pretty recently that like he had a same fret sweep, so it might have been like 10 10 10 as opposed to doing like your
That's
10
doable. I could
8
show you right
11.
now, Steven.
It's doable, but it's not clean is ultimately what it
It
comes
is.
out to be.
You
um
roll you roll the finger. You're not laying it, you're not barring, you roll it.
hey man, I'm gonna be honest, Bill and Pat, my guitar players from my other band up in Jersey, they've yelled at me like several times for writing same fret sweep, so I know for a fact with how good they are, it's not easy to play clean. It's pretty much
Yeah.
impossible. Um, but Nathan's usually the riff master as far as writing them goes, and then we'll pass them off in a Google Drive folder. Juan will kind of take a look at it, be like, okay, like this is cool, like this is playable, or like this is cool, but like this sucks and I can't do this. And then from there he'll kind of tailor it to make sure his hand positioning and everything is pretty comfortable for the way he plays. And then from there, usually it'll get passed off to me, and I'll either do like some sort of skeleton drums, or if Juan or Nathan already have the skeleton drums, then like we'll track it, and then from there I'll actually go in and because I like the matrix system a little more on Logic versus Guitar Pro, like I'll then program the drums from there and kind of just learn them. I usually 99% of the time I write drums that and write songs that I have no idea how to play, but I just kind of figure it out.
Yeah, you practice, you get better.
And so, do you bring the drums in from Guitar Pro into Logic, and
Almost
then
never. Almost
okay?
never. It's
I
usually
was wondering how that worked.
yeah, so Juan's a little bit better at writing drums on Guitar Pro than I am. I just kind of I used to use another tablature program that was free, and it's way outdated at this point, but it's called Tuxutar, and they have an actual drum matrix where it's like you open it and it almost looks like an Excel sheet, and then you kind of punch the notes in from there, as opposed to like knowing the numbers, which Guitar Pro doesn't seem to have one as far as I know. So it's a normal keyboard scroll, kind of like in Logic. So as opposed to wasting a million hours trying to figure it out in Guitar Pro, I just wait until it's the MIDI's exported or it's tracked or whatever, and then go into Logic and actually just program it from there.
Do you guys run all your music through Guitar Pro though?
For the most part, yeah. Usually if we're tinkering with like VSTs or any sort of like post-production-esque instruments that we're not playing ourselves, then sometimes we'll do that in Logic, but we very much are a Guitar Pro band. It's just the easiest way to write, especially when we're, doing modal shifts or changing different keys and stuff like that. Like it's very much easy to manage everything as opposed to just kind of like being like, oh, like here's a riff I wrote. I don't know if it's in key, and if it is, I don't know what key it is.
Yeah, to what Steven said, I'm like so used to reading music that I almost have to write it out. Like if I try to remember a riff that I did, or remember a riff and then try to fit it into another song where it's not going to be in key, or I'll have to change things to make it in key, it's just a nightmare. So I am like, I have to write things out for me to be able to like read back over it, and just for me to be able to practice the riffs, even though I'm not the one playing the guitar. Like I try to learn riffs that we do right, or that I do right, just to A, because they're cool, and then B, to make sure that they are playable. But that's just like the way my brain works, is like have to write it out for it to be real.
It's also and I'm gonna expand on that just so the music nerds in here can geek out a little more. Um, I've always been writing, so I did a lot of writing for my band up in Jersey, which we've been working on a record for like 10 years at this point. It seems like forever. But I've been doing a lot of writing for them since I joined that band back in 2016 or 17, whenever it was. And the way the person that actually showed me how to write music, quote unquote, was my bass player Aristotle, and he's very much a music theory junkie without actually knowing he was a music theory junkie. And Nathan, being the absolute, you know, music theory nerd he is, can then like explain everything to me that like of the way I write or the way Ari writes. So um Nathan's great at kind of looking at stuff and being like, oh, like that's a multimeter riff, and you have it in 3/4, and then like a random riff of or a random measure of 5/4, and then a random measure of 7/8, like, or like, oh, like this note isn't in key, it's an accidental, but like it makes sense here. So like, or like let's not do let's not harmonize the third, let's harmonize the fifth, or knowing all the chord names and stuff like that. So um even if Nathan doesn't write the actual riff itself, he's very much involved in the proper phrasings, groupings, everything from, then harmonizing it, or maybe changing a note in a chord to, make it diminished, or literally everything
Yeah.
else. And he could speak more to that than I can. I press a button. I push buttons for a living is pretty much what it comes
Yeah.
down to.
Or I mean, if you want to tickle the music nerds things, a lot of times if not necessarily in those two singles, but in our upcoming music, there's plenty of times where we've had key changes, and I'm like, okay, well, we want to go from this key to this key, or from this key where we're in like C minor, and then we want to go to a mode of C minor. How do we get there? And I'm like, oh, well, we can use secondary dominance, we can use modal interchange, we could use chordal harmony, different things like that to get us from point A to point B.
Yeah, that's really cool because you're the first group that we've talked to that writes their stuff down that has said that they write it down. I mean, we didn't think to ask. Other guys might be writing it down. I'm not saying they're not, but Guitar Pro is real cool. There's been times that I've thought to myself, man, if I had Guitar Pro, I could have wrote that down and I wouldn't have forgotten, a year or two down the road whenever I was like, oh yeah, that might actually work here, and then I can't even remember what it was really anymore. So it's like an idea that I lost, all because it wasn't written down. And I've heard people say it's not a plan or it doesn't exist until it's written down.
So a couple things for you. So I was very much like you in that aspect. Growing up in the early 2000s and playing music in the early 2010s when everything's, voice memos on the cell phone and stuff like that. So, you want to remember a riff, you're like, oh, I'm gonna put it right next to my amp and play the riff and then figure it out later again. So I at least I almost am happy I learned that way kind of because then if, you know, when we release these singles, the guitar player we had at the time just kind of didn't exactly know what he was playing and didn't track stuff that he knew how to play. So like it very much turned into when we got the stems back and he was no longer in the band, me having to kind of sit and be like, oh, here's what he did here, or like here's his pattern, or like, you know, he might have been playing like 3-5-7 on the deep strings, but really it's supposed to be like 3-7-5 or literally just random, and Nate could tell you that the notation. I can't. But that being said, Guitar Pro is absolutely worth it. I think it's $80 and you get like 4 or 5 licenses. So like you need one license for the band and then like everybody in the band can then take it. But if you guys don't want to spend the money, you can still find that program I was telling you about. The icon is a little penguin with a guitar, but it's called Tux Guitar, Tux like tuxedo. And it's pretty much Guitar Pro. I think they're on 8 or 9 now. They might be on 10, but like it's Guitar Pro 4 or 5, so like it's way outdated, but it's free, so you can't really complain that much.
Yeah. One thing I will say about Guitar Pro, and this isn't an original Nathan phrase. I'm stealing this from Sanjay Kumar from one of the interviews he did with the Entheos on the Copperwise podcast, or Naveen Copper, whatever podcast that Entheos does, right? It's very easy to get, he called it demo-itis, where you hear it on Guitar Pro and it sounds cool on Guitar Pro and you just fall in love with it and you don't want to make any changes to it, right? We've fallen into that before with different band members, myself included, but we try to stay away from that because sometimes something might sound really cool on Guitar Pro, but then you play it on the guitar and it just doesn't make any sense. Like we've got a behind the scenes song without a name. We just call it Choir Kids Are Nerds, and I wrote like some very cool Baroque sounding riffs with like some different chords in it, and the chords sounded amazing on Guitar Pro. It was great. Then we play we play the chords on the guitar, and it was not it. We had to change it. So it's good to use Guitar Pro as a tool, but that's all it is a tool. Don't get married to it.
That's
Yeah.
that's ultimately what it is it's a tool, and it can be abused, especially for me personally. I the way I like to say it is it's great, but it's very one-dimensional in ways. So like if I'm writing drums on whether it be Guitar Pro or programming them or writing them in text guitar, like I'm very much one-dimensional, and I'm like, oh, you just want a really fast fill into like a straight up blast beat or whatever. Whereas then when I actually take it to the kid, I'm like, okay, like this works, this is fluid, this could be changed. So it is always good to kind of use it as a tool to start the foundation of songs. rather than be like, okay, like this is the finished product coming out of Guitar Pro. All we need to do now is record it and it'll be good. It doesn't work that way. And what I found, speaking on what Nathan was saying, the good part about Guitar Pro though, and the type of music we play is if we write something that, we think sounds good on guitar, but it doesn't, we can then kind of keep those same chords or keep those same notations and throw them to some sort of VST and like then layer it in the back to give it that very symphonic and or like heavy ambient sound where it's like kind of layered with like heavy reverb so it's not in your face but it is still present. So
Yeah,
there's
or just keep the
also
idea and change the
I'm so
notes.
sorry if you hear the dog toy in the back. I'm so sorry.
That's all right, man.
He's awake now.
Yeah. No
That's
worries.
great. He's like, "Where you at? Come over here."
Well, I have just a couple more questions for you guys. So we touched on, it sounds like you guys use, you're familiar with a lot of software and stuff like that. What about your just hardware, like your gear, guitars you like, amps, drum kit? What's your preferred? What do you guys like?
Nathan,
I
you have a long list. So
Oh no, I
you
don't.
start. You start.
I like old reliable SM. Not what is it? SM7. No, I mean I've got this right for tracking
The
at home.
7B and then
SM7B, and then
the
stage wise
57 or
SM
58.
58, the
58.
SM58. Um, up until we had a conversation with one of the sound guys at live venues, I was also using a cloud lifter to pass my vocals through. It compresses it a little bit, adds a little bit of gain. For live though, he's like, dude, this is really killing the speakers. Like I was getting terrible feedback in the microphone, so we stopped doing that. As far as the gear that I use, I mean, I'm not the one playing the guitars in the band or anything like that, but I'm a big fan of Jackson, Ibanez, and I have one headless guitar that's a Legator. That's because I didn't want to like ball out and spend Ormsby or Strandberg or Kiesel money. Um, and then Steven
Which
can correct me.
which is what our guys play. So
Yeah, so
one is
right.
using a either a bright blue or a bright pink 7-string Ormsby. And for all the music nerds out there, we tune to a normal drop A on 7 string. So it's your low A and then just standard E tuning from there. Um,
Okay.
so Juan's on Ormsby but wants to go with Strasbourg. Uh,
Yeah,
Andrew
Ormsby's not cheap.
No, they're
Andrew
nice.
is Strandberg, and then from there, they're both running through Quad Cortex, um, which then goes through for the actual front of the house nerds, Behringer X hairs to then everything. So we run a full rack when we're out. Like we just bring it, we plug in, and at this point, one's not even using cabs or anything. We just run straight through the PA system, which I think at some point we need to add cabs, at least if nothing else, just for a backup to be like, oh, like we're gonna end up overloading the front of the house. Like let's run this. Um, so we're a digital band as far as amp sims and stuff go like that. And then for me, I'm a big Tama guy as of a few years ago. I've always kind of loved Tama. I've had like multiple drum kits at this point, and the Tama is the one I went with a few years ago. It's the to nerd out a little more, it's the Star Classic Walnut Birch. And then I'm
That's
playing
nice.
a so it's your normal 10, 12, 16, 22. And then from there I'm playing the Mappa Burl Maple Starphonic Snare, which I believe is a 14 by 6. And I just absolutely fell in love with them. And at this point, you can't even hear my kick drum because it's just running triggers, which I know people are gonna be like, hey, it's cheating. Like, it's honestly, it's more difficult to play with triggers than not. Like, if I could go back to being in like a pop punk or, melodic hardcore band and not have to worry about triggers ever again, I would in a heartbeat because it's just terrible.
Are,
Um,
are there any metal bands these days that don't play? I mean, I don't see how it's cheating. Like, doesn't everybody play with triggers? Like,
So the issue with triggers, if you want to get into it a little bit, is they don't give what you can program the module to do this, but they don't give a lot of wiggle room. So like if you know anything about like MIDI drums and stuff, like you have your full range of velocities from 1 to 127, whereas triggers, the way we set them up in metal is to run pretty much 127 the entire time. So a lot of people think they're cheating because you're not those quiet hits are coming through, but also when you pull up the volume for everything and quote unquote compress everything, even the slightest tap on the kick drum when you don't mean to hit it is gonna show through. So it's if you're playing double strokes on the kick drum, which I do, you're right, right, left, left. Your first hit, whether it be your hands or your feet, your first hit is always going to be audibly louder than the second hit. So what the triggers do is it brings up the volume on that second hit, essentially. So people are like, "Oh, you're cheating," and it's like, I'm still playing everything. It's just cutting out that low frequency, 200 hertz mud that would normally come through a microphone and cleaning it up a little bit, making it a little clickier. But it's actually, in my opinion, after playing no triggers for 10 years and then playing triggers for 15 years, I had to essentially relearn how to play the drum. Like it's a totally different monster, and I don't think people seem to understand that. Um, but yeah, I mean, Roland TM2, with an RT30K on the kick, um, all Tama hardware except my kick pedals, which I'm playing the Trick Pro 1V, Black Widow, Bigfoot. Absolutely love those. Those are the cleanest pedals I've ever touched in my life. And then I'm a Zildjian guy, so I'm using pretty much all A customs on the crashes, flashes, Oriental Chinas, and then I'm rocking an original Z, not even the Z custom, the Z Mega Bell, and I think that symbol's from like the early 2000s, so like it's almost this old.
It's a good one then.
Oh my God, it's just it's a monster, and they just reintroduced the Z series with the star hammering, which all my Zildjian guys will nerd out about it. They just re-released the star hammered Z custom so they could bring back the original Mega Bell, but like I have like the original, like it's all patinaed, the logos are fading, and it's uh it's the sound you hear before you're about to die. Is just that crank on that bell.
I
Nice.
call that one a keeper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, awesome. Um, so I know you guys are working on an EP, and
It's a
one thing we
two-parter.
like to ask, yeah,
It's
is
a
it?
two-parter.
Are you? What'd you say?
It's a two-parter. Nathan will speak to that in a little
Well,
bit, but
let him ask his question
yeah.
first, bro.
Well, I was gonna say, what goals do you guys have? Like, what can we expect from Vox Nostra going out for the rest of the year into 2025?
So, first thing that we're working on is just playing live more. We're trying to get booked at more shows. Houston, we're very thankful for Jose Campos at Radiation. He likes us. He likes our music. So we've been able to play at a lot of his shows. We're trying to play more at with different promoters like Pegstar, Third String Promotions. Just try to get more into the Houston scene. We're also trying to branch out to San Antonio and Austin and the DFW area. Just try to hit like the big cities and really kind of plant ourselves in the Texas scene. And then we're working on this. It's a 7-song EP that's like Steven said, it's going to be a two-parter. So part one is what we're currently working on. It's a 7-song EP. We've got probably about half of it done at this point, and it's killing me personally. Which no fault to the guys. This shit just takes time. But then I'm the one that gets the DMs from our fans, and they're like, like when's a new song coming out? And I'm like, dude, be patient. Like we've got lives. We're not professionals. Um, but we're working on that. I'm very excited for it. Like I said earlier, those two singles, as good as they are, they just as we've come together as a band and we've gotten better at writing together and really finding our sound, those two singles are going to pale in comparison to this EP. Not only that, but we're working with a phenomenal producer out of Atlanta, Georgia, John Douglas. He's worked with Whitechapel, Job for a Cowboy, Fallujah, a bunch of big bands. He's even worked with Justin Bieber, which when I was looking at his discography, that kind of made me chuckle. But no, he's been phenomenal to work with, so much so to where we have sent him like DIs for our guitars, and just by looking at a waveform, he's like, "Hey, this needs to be redone," or "Yeah, this isn't downpicked. You need to downpick this." So I'm thankful that he is doing everything on his end to make this the best finished product it can be. Past that, that'll probably be out at some point in 2025. Past that, we're going to start working on a part two. So they're both concept albums. Part one be out 2025. The goal is to have part two out year and a half, 2 years, maybe a little bit longer. It just depends, right? Like we said earlier, Murphy always shows up. We're not professionals. We all have lives, jobs, family, relationships, friendships. We have commitments outside of this. So we're getting it done. We're being proactive, but this shit just takes time, right? Like Steven tells me all the time, Rome wasn't built in a day. Be patient. But that's kind of going forward. What we're looking at is just trying to plant ourselves more firmly in the Texas scene and then put out good, high quality music.
The one good thing, and sorry to not shut up, it's normal. I apologize.
Nah, he
You're
talks.
Um,
good.
He's a
We
he's
love
a
it.
talker.
but the good part is the seventh song is kind of getting our feet wet. So this is the first actual record that I'm producing, guitars and stuff like that. And it is every guitar player tracks different. So just kind of learning how to track with Juan and being anal about, hey man, like you finish guitar one in like a day and a half. So like before you start guitar two, you need to change your strings. Like you just need to, I'm sorry. And just kind of getting on his case and like, but also making him pull out the best take he can without being a complete asshole about, which again is, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Juan. But I mean, I always try to push him and like I can usually listen to his takes and be like, okay, like this is something I could work with, or like, okay, like you're hitting a little string noise here. So like there's times where he's played the riff 4 or 5 times and there's still some sort of string noise. And like I literally then like I hit record and I'm sitting there holding the frets that like I don't want him to touch. Or like the strings I don't want him to touch, that way when he's chicken picking whatever riff, like he doesn't have to worry about making any sort of noise with the other strings, which it's a very janky process of being a DIY producer, but we're here doing that. But it's ultimately what I was getting at is it's good to know how to work with one. That way when EP1 is done being tracked, which we're about 2 songs away from actually being done tracking the record, as far as guitars and stuff go. From there, when we follow up with the second part of the album, which is probably only going to be 4 or 5 songs as opposed to 7, it should at least be a little bit more rapid of a turnaround time as opposed to making people like kind of giving people the taste of like, hey, here's 2 singles, and then being like, oh, 2 years later, hey, here's this, EP we've been working on forever. Like, so sorry, like we know you kind of don't give a crap anymore, but like please come back. Where after we churn that out, it's going to be like, okay, like this is your taste for the EP just to be followed up probably within a year or so is what we're looking at.
Right on. That's awesome. I mean, it sounds like you guys have a plan, so that's always good, you know?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
we've got whiteboards up in the studio. I've already begun kind of writing skeleton stuff for the second EP because they told me, they're like, Nathan, if you change anything on this first EP, A, you're fired. B, we're gonna kill you. Uh, not serious about that, but they told me that like
Yeah.
nothing is changing. All this
He
stop
he
writing.
might not think we're serious, but I'm serious.
Well, that's cool. I mean, you gotta have a vision and you gotta have a plan for the future, or else you're gonna get to a point and just kind of stall out. It's a
Yeah.
plateau and stall out. So as long as you have something to work for, work towards, that's the way growth and progression happens, right? It's the only way you're gonna get more music out there and keep doing what you guys are doing. So,
The really
um,
and sorry to interject. The really good part about coming up with part two of the EP is that Juan has just been a workhorse for this first EP.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely.
the second part will probably be the introduction of Andrew as far as writing and tracking and stuff goes. So we're very happy that it will take off a lot of the workload of Juan and take off a lot of the pressure. And like Nathan was saying, we're all full-time workers. Like I'm at any given point working 2 or 3 jobs. Nathan's in commercial real estate full-time. I don't know what Juan does, but between how much he works and his commute, he's gone 50, 60 hours a week. So like we're all
We're
just
just
out here
busy, like
grinding.
everybody
Yeah.
else.
yeah. Well, it's cool that you guys find the time to get together and work on your passion. So that's great.
Yeah, one day we'll be famous, touring the world and making tens of dollars.
One of these days.
Yeah, such is metal.
Exactly.
I'm like, damn it, I could have written easy songs, done like pop music, and I'd be a millionaire already.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah,
like
you mean I could have toured in a tour bus and been comfortable? What?
Who wants to do that?
yeah, this is more fun and genuine, Otherwise
Exactly.
otherwise you're just working another job, man.
Exactly.
Well, guys, I think that concludes like my questions. I think we were going to feature a song by you guys. Zumi, you want to introduce the Vox Nostra song that we're going to play on the episode?
Yes. Once again, everybody out there, we like to play a song and hope everybody gets, to listen to it. Sometimes YouTube likes to be a jerk and try to say that we're violating copyrights, even though I'm like, I got permission.
I give you permission, I promise.
But I
Permit.
I got permission, so it's not a violation of copyright. But I get it; they're just doing their thing too. So hopefully we don't run into any of that. But just a little fun thing that I get to deal with every week whenever we have an episode and we get to edit a song in. We get to see what YouTube thinks of the song too. So, but really excited, Vox Nostra, and we are going to play the song Facade. And we are going to have that coming at you full force right meow.
There you go.
Great song. Great song. So, we're just going to close out the episode. We appreciate you guys so much for just taking some time this evening, hanging out with us, answering the call, and just wanting to chat, talk about some metal, showing us how you guys do it. That's what we're all here for. And ultimately, we want somebody to be able to walk away and maybe check out some new music or check out some music that they hadn't heard before. That's another thing that this is all about, is making sure that we keep the snowball building and rolling down that hill, because we love metal and we want to see it continue to grow, and we appreciate all you guys are doing to contribute to that. So thanks again for tonight, and with that being said, Metal Block over and out.
Yeah, thank you guys very much for having us on the show.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Thank you guys.